Let me join in and welcome you. Those who are guests, we are glad to have you here with us. As always, glad to have you visiting and being our guest. And those, even when we put you to work, we're glad to have you here. Also, for our members, glad to see you here. Looking forward to our fellowship tonight for hot dogs and for ice cream and just getting together and enjoying each other's company. Looking forward to the parents getting together and talking about our summer and seeing what we might be able to do. And we have a couple of lists from the teenagers of some activities that they want to be involved in, some things that they want to do this summer. And so we'll be talking about those, and maybe you can say, well, I'll take on that, and we'll get that put together. And so that's kind of what we'll be talking about tonight and the things that we'll be doing there. I had to laugh when Ryan was talking about having extra stuff left over and maybe having a chip fellowship. And I looked at Rick, and the first thing I thought of was a Vienna sausage and mustard fellowship. That'd be a good one, wouldn't it? Yeah. Lots of things that we could do there. It was mentioned the gospel meetings are going on in the area. I meant to say this to Ryan ahead of time, but Monday night at 6:03, the van will be here at the church building. We'll be leaving and going to Tibble Chapel. That's 3 after 6. Don't get here at 4 after 6. 3 after 6, and or give or take that time, and we'll take the van to go to Tibble Chapel. Eddie Gilpin is speaking. You may or may not know Eddie Gilpin. You may know his son Kyle, who preaches at Crossroads. Eddie will be speaking at the meeting at Tibble Chapel. He's involved with a number of things that I've been a part of, and I'm looking forward to hearing him speak. He's coming to Tibble Chapel from all the way up in Salem, Virginia. That's a long drive. But he is coming here to do that meeting. I'm looking forward to being with him. Again, we're glad to have you all here. Now, this first picture that we put up this morning, and I've double-clicked, so I hope it doesn't move on. I did. I'm sorry, my mistake. Can you take it back for me? Okay, thank you. I grew up on Sesame Street. Not literally on Sesame Street, but, you know, I grew up watching Sesame Street. And you may be looking at this picture and you already see the hand-drawn cartoon. Mom comes to her daughter. She says, I want you to go to the store for me. And I want you to pick up a loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. Now, I want you to remember that. Can you remember that? A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. And a little curly-haired girl says, of course, Mama, I can remember that. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. And so she skips all the way to the store singing this wonderful song, a loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. And she sings that all over the store. She gets to the store, and the man at the counter says, can I help you? She says, I need a loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. And she gets home and she says, Mommy, I remembered it. Now, I don't know about you. This may be a guy thing. Guys, you can amen if this is true. But if Amy sends me to the Dollar General, she sends me to Walmart, I can pick up 1 or 2 items. But if there are 3 items, I have a rule. Make a list. 2 items, I can remember. 3 items, I need a list. Right, guys? Yeah, a list. A list. I don't know why it is that I'm that way, but I struggle when it comes to things like that. Now, when you read the Bible and you read the Old Testament, you get to all the commands. And there are 10 commandments. And then on top of those 10 commandments, there are about 600 other commandments, 600 other laws that the children of Israel were supposed to keep. And among those 600 other laws, there were also all the traditions that the elders had added to everything else. And all these people were supposed to keep all of these commandments. And it got me to wondering, I can't remember 3 things. How are they so supposed to remember 600, 10 specifically, and then all the traditions of the elders? It's enough for me to throw my hands up in defeat. How can I be expected to remember all that? And so I want to ask a simple question. I want to look at a simple idea of not 10 commandments, but keeping the 2 commandments. If I can narrow it down to 2, then I can remember it. I can keep up with that, and I can't get the clicker to work, so guys, you'll have to keep up with me here. Keeping not the 10, but the 2 commandments. When we open our Bibles to Matthew chapter 22, Matthew chapter 22, the Pharisees and the scribes are going to ask Jesus a question. They're going to try to set him up. They're going to try to get him to answer a question that they've been arguing about for years. And that question is simple. And they really, I'm not sure, want the answer, but they want to kind of trap Jesus with the answer because, well, their question is, which is the most important? And really, they should know. They should know because the prophet said in Micah chapter 6 and verse 8, what is it that the Lord requires of you? You know, the prophet had narrowed it down to love justice, to do mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. He had narrowed it down that far, and maybe they wanted some definitions on that. Maybe they wanted to kind of argue it back and forth, and maybe they already know the answer, but they really want to pin Jesus down. Maybe they've got some school of thought that they're arguing about as to which one is more important, which one's the best, which one. Maybe they're just trying to get it down to where they don't have to remember a lot, kind of like I would. But they want to know, what is the greatest commandment? So they ask, Matthew chapter 22, verse 34. When the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked a question to test him. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? How are we going to deal with that? Well, Jesus is going to give his answer. And he's going to say it's not any of the 600. It's not any of the oral traditions of the elders that we've looked at in the past couple of weeks. It's not really any specifically one of the 10 commandments. Jesus is going to pare it down, and you know this already. He's going to pare it down to 2. And here's commandment 1. Commandment 1. Matthew chapter 22, verse 37 and 38. And he said to them, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. Oh, here it is. It's simple now. Can you put it down where I can understand it? Yes, I can, Jesus says. Here is the greatest commandment, plain and simple. It's what you've known since childhood. It's the Shema. It's the heart. It is what you are supposed to remember. This is the teaching. This is it. This is commandment 1. Don't miss this point, Jesus says. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. In fact, you go back to Deuteronomy chapter 6, and you look at that passage beginning at verse 1 going through verse 9, and that's that passage where Jesus says, excuse me, where Jesus says, write this down. Put it as frontlets before your eyes. Put it on the doorpost. Put it on the gate. Make sure you see this. Talk about it when you get up. Talk about it when you go to bed. Talk about it with your children. Talk about it when you're walking. This is something you ought to remember. This is what the focus is. And when you read verse 5 of Deuteronomy chapter 6, here it is. Verse 4, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. There it is. Jesus says, you've known it. It's the here passage. It's what God said to talk about a long time ago. The Lord our God is one. Love him with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Wait a minute. Jesus misquoted. Now, if you read Matthew's account, it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. But the Deuteronomy passage that I read says heart, soul, and might. Well, Jesus and disciples used what we know as the Septuagint, is their Old Testament Bible, the Greek translation of the Old Testament. And the Greek translation of the Old Testament of Deuteronomy chapter 6 uses the word mind instead of might. So Jesus just quotes from what they're familiar with. He doesn't misquote, he just quotes different from what we have. Now, what's the big deal? It's not really a big deal because you go to Mark's account, in Mark chapter 12 and verse 30, and Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. So he puts might in there and just calls it strength. So Jesus is quoting this, and he says, here it is. Here's our focus, number 1. You love God with all your emotion, with all your intellect, and with all of your physical nature, all your heart, soul, might, and mind. Everything that you are. You love God with all of you. Let's break this down for just a moment. Let's make sure that we understand this. Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all of your heart. What does that mean? To love the Lord my God with all of my heart? It means loving to spend time with God. When I was in high school, I was a okay student. I made good grades. Don't get me wrong. I made good grades. I was in honor society, and I was in the math club, Mu Alpha Theta. That's Greek for math, by the way, if you spell it out in English. That's kind of cool. We were geeks, all right? So, I made good grades, but I didn't really apply myself the way I should have. I'll be honest. I could have studied a little harder. I could have had a higher GPA had I tried. I could have graduated higher in the class than I did, but I just, that wasn't my focus. I'll be honest. I got to college and I made good grades in a big high school, and I get to a smaller college, and I'll be honest with you, I had not really learned to study in high school. This is a hint, high school students. I had not learned to study in high school. And my first semester of college showed that. I had to pick some things up. And my second semester and my second year got a little bit better. But my third year and fourth year, my grades dramatically improved. And I'll tell you why. Because Amy is a great student. I'll just brag on her. She is a great student. And she had a simple little idea. If we're going to spend time together, I'm going to be studying and I'm going to be in the library. So guess where I had to be? If I was going to spend time with her, I had to go to the library. And in the library, there were books. And in the library, there were little study carrels. And you study in the library. It's amazing how my grades picked up when I started to study. And when I learned her methods of studying, some of those really helped. You see, when you love somebody with all your heart, and this is where this comes to, you're going to want to spend time with them. If you love God with all your heart, aren't you going to want to spend time with Him?